Okay, so the quarter ends with chapter 9, which is an introduction to stoichiometry and doing chemical calculations. Now, this is an important topic, but this chapter is actually kind of just a brief little intro, and you'll come back to it later. And but it is important that you master this material because you'll be seeing it again and again. So in this first video, we're just going to review a few key concepts. So stoichiometry is the study of the amounts of substances, so not their identity, but the amounts of things that are involved in either chemical or physical changes. And the key tools that we're going to use to do these calculations are dimensional analysis, which just basically means including our units and cancelling our units when we're doing calculations. And the types of calculations that we're doing are going to involve conversion factors. And if you remember, conversion factors are fractions where you have different units on the top and bottom line of that fraction. So there's three types of conversion factors that we're going to be using. We're going to be using molar masses, so this would be grams per mole. And how we calculate a molar mass is by adding together the masses of the atoms that are present in a formula. We're also going to be using Avogadro's number to convert between the number of particles and moles of particles. And Avogadro's number is a constant which you can always look up. And to four significant figures, it's 6.022 by 10 to the 23 particles per 1 mole. The third kind of conversion factor that we're going to be using is what's referred to as a mole ratio. And how we decide mole ratios is by looking at reaction and formula coefficients. And it's important that we learn how to use mole ratios because they allow us to convert between moles of different substances. I should point out at this point that the SI unit for amount is the mole, and the abbreviation for the mole is just MOL, all lowercase. So this is your key kind of unit conversion diagram for these chemical stoichiometric calculations. And so you can see that when we go from the mass of substance A to the moles of substance A, we use the molar mass. And when we go from number of particles of A to the moles of A, we use Avogadro's number. And similarly, if we have a substance B. When I want to go from moles of one kind of substance, let's call that A, to moles of another kind of substance, B, and then I'm going to use this thing called the mole ratio. So generally what I like to do is think about the type of conversion that I'm doing. So say I'm going to start here and I'm going to end here, and then I know that I'm going to need these three conversion factors to make that happen. So it's important that you know your way around this diagram. Molar masses are by far the most common conversion factor that we're going to be using, and you have to calculate those. Mole ratios and Avogadro's number don't need to be calculated. There's no math to get those, but you do have to calculate molar masses, and you should be able to do that quickly. And there's a couple of ways of speeding that up. One is to use an online molar mass calculator. So there are plenty of web pages that will calculate molar masses when you input a formula. There's another way is to use the calculator in ALEKS that actually has atomic masses stored in it. That's really nice to do because it avoids you're using the exact values that ALEKS wants you to the correct number of significant figures, so you're not going to get any rounding error. Something that's really, really important, whenever you're going from amount of one thing to an amount of another thing, whether it be in moles or whether it be in grams or whether it's in particles, the only point in this diagram where you can do that is in the middle section here. So you have to go from moles of one thing to moles of another via the mole ratio. So whenever you move from amount of one substance to amount of another, you have to go through the moles. So what that means is if you don't know what to do, just convert anything you've got in expressed in grams to moles, and at least you're going to get some partial credit. It's important that you show all your work clearly, including the units, right? So make sure you write out the unit names. Now then, what's important is for you when you're doing the calculation, in fact, before you even enter anything into your calculator, you always want to check that your units cancel properly. Draw lines through them, and then maybe draw a circle over what unit remains, and make sure that you have the calculation set up. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. All right. So, I should be able to follow your calculations clearly. You should be doing your very best to make it known to me that you understand what is going on. Okay, so that concludes the introduction with a few little handy hints there at the end. And now we're going to move on to the next section. If there's anything in this you didn't understand, please reach out to me and I'll be glad to help you.